Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Stephen Savory. I am the project coordinator for the Skills for the Future program here at the Ministry of Educational Transformation. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this, our second town hall meeting looking at inclusive education. Joining me on the stage is two lovely ladies, and I'd like to, as we begin, introduce them. And afterwards, I'd like to ask our communications specialist, Asha Stout, to be able to give you the housekeeping rules for this evening. So joining me on the stage, we have, to my immediate left, is the Chief Education Officer for the Ministry of Educational Transformation, Dr. Ramona Archer Bradshaw. Ma'am, welcome.
Thank you.
And then next to her is our keynote speaker and presenter of the policy, our consultant for the Ministry of Education Consultant, Education Transformation, Dr. Janice Gibbs. Welcome. Asha, please tell us about the housekeeping rules, please, before we move forward.
Hi, everyone, again. Let me introduce myself. My name is Asha Stout. I am the communications specialist with the Skills for the Future program. Just to do a little bit of housekeeping this evening, the bathrooms are outside. If you go to my right.
Thank you very much, Asha. Before we go into our opening remarks by our chief, it would be remiss of me if I didn't acknowledge the presence of a number of persons in the audience. I know that we are blessed with a number of persons, representatives from the disabled community. We also have Dr. Paul Murphy, the Director of our Change Management Unit. Welcome, sir. And we also have with us the chair of the technical working group that would have worked with Dr. Gibbs and her team, members of her team, Dr. Lynch, Dr. Ginny Lynch. Just wave, Dr. Lynch. And we have Michelle Gooding. Yes, and you also have, oh my goodness, I'm going to be slaughtered for this one. Is that Aisha? Yes, Aisha. Thank you very much. These are the persons who would have worked with Dr. Gibbs from the ministry to be able to pull together this particular document. Thank you very much, ladies, for your service. And at this time, we want to be able to ask our chief to be able to give you opening remarks and a brief overview of the inclusive education perspective from the ministry. Chief?
Thank you very much, Stephen. A blessed good evening to everybody here. It is a pleasure to see all of you in one space. I always look forward to these meetings where we could come together and have conversations with you, where we could hear your feedback and seek to incorporate your feedback so that we can chart the way forward. As Stephen said, this is our second town hall meeting, and I'm not sure if you had an opportunity to watch the first one, but the first one was quite interesting. There were many comments that were quite instructive, and I believe that this one will be no different. I always relish in the support of my colleagues from the Ministry of Educational Transformation, and I see some familiar faces as well. So feel free to ask questions at the end. If you don't understand something, you can ask a question and we will seek to clarify it for you. If you have suggestions, I'm going to ask you to do the same. You might be asking yourself why we are focusing on an inclusive education system. Do we, at present, have an inclusive education system? We are inclusive to a degree. We are nowhere near where we want to be. We acknowledge that there are deficits, And that's why we always speak about the fact that we are journeying towards true inclusive education. And this afternoon, I'm going to talk a bit about the importance of what we're doing here. And I'm going to share with you also about the things that we have been doing as a Ministry of Educational Transformation. Very often people look on and they think that they understand and they know what is happening within the education system, but sometimes they do not understand fully, and this is an opportunity for me to share with you on the work that we have done to date. We see an inclusive education policy as being very essential for Barbados because it will ensure equitable access, not only to education, but to quality education for all learners, regardless of their backgrounds or socioeconomic status. And over the past 4 years, as a Ministry of Educational Transformation, we have been focused intensively on supporting children who have diverse abilities and who have developmental disorders. To date, I must say that significant strides have been made, including the expansion of inclusionary units through the introduction of special education classes at 4 schools, with a view to expanding student enrollment at the Milton Lynch and the St. Christopher primary schools, thereby addressing the growing needs in the southern region of the island. So as we expand based on the data that we have collected, and we realize that within the southern region, we are seeing more children with autism presenting themselves in those areas. And I must commend the work of the education officer and senior education officer who have responsibility for special education needs, because they're able to identify these needs and make recommendations re the expansion of the inclusionary units across the island. Additionally, in 2024, 30 students received speech therapy and 28 have already benefited from this service in 2025. And the ministry continues to work closely with behavioral and occupational therapists to support parents in preparing our children for school, including assistance with potty training. There are some parents who don't have an idea of where to start with the potty training, and the Ministry of Education over the past 2 years specifically has embarked upon workshops, both virtual and physical workshops for parents to teach them how to potty train their children. It is also important to note that a sensory room was established at the Olga Miller Nursery School in collaboration with the Barbados Council for the Disabled under the theme My Inclusive School Project. Additionally, to enhance literacy, the ministry facilitated 4 multisensory literacy workshops for teachers and school assistants from both public and private nursery and primary schools. Over 176 participants attended these sessions last summer. And furthermore, 85 teachers received training in structured approaches to teaching students on the autism spectrum. I will also share with you that just last week we had a workshop where 35 persons from across public primary schools engaged in a session that focused on managing behavior in schools, a school positive behavior management approach. And by the ending of this month, we will have another workshop for all principals that will focus on how to manage students with autism. In partnership with the Rotary Club of Barbados, hearing screenings were conducted for 2,599 infants B and Class 4 students during the 2023 to 2024 academic year. And this marked a significant increase from 1,906 students in 2022 and 1,657 students in 2023. We must note, though, that referrals also rose, with 216 students referred in 2024 compared to 84 in 2022 and 183 in 2023. In as much as we are focusing on addressing students with deficits relative to the hearing, we wanted to place emphasis on vision as well. And as such, we collaborated with the Ministry of Health and Wellness, and we reached 1,600, or 64% of first form students in 2023, with plans to continue this initiative in 2025. The Ministry of Educational Transformation also gifted the Ministry of Health and Wellness 4 acuity charts to help with the vision screening. This is how seriously we are taking this, because we want to make sure that all of our children have a good start to their education so that we can identify where the gaps are and at least try to close them. To address reading deficits, a structured reading program was implemented across all 67 primary schools, 10 secondary schools, and 5 special needs schools. And the program targeted Infants A and Infants B students, as well as others with reading challenges. And through this initiative, 203 teachers have been trained to enhance the reading and comprehension skills of approximately 5,000 students. Recognizing the growing need for psychosocial support, the ministry has significantly expanded its student support services unit from 12 officers in November 2020 to 40 officers today. And this includes 7 primary school social workers, 7 secondary school counselors, and 4 safety officers. And these professionals work with staff members within our schools to address students' social, emotional, behavioral, and mental health needs. Additionally, the ministry received 3 additional psychologists to address the long list of referrals that we receive from schools across the island. Secondary school counselors and safety officers are primarily assigned to the 7 schools identified in the 2019 Stakeholder Consultation on School Violence. They provide individual and group counseling, case management, and referrals to agencies such as the Child Care Board, the Juvenile Liaison Scheme, NCSA, Welfare Department, and the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Clinic. NGOs like Parados are also key partners in supporting families. Ladies and gentlemen, with all the work that has been done by the Ministry of Educational Transformation, we recognize acutely that there is still quite some way to go when it comes to inclusive education. We also recognize that we cannot continue to do things in a piecemeal way. And this is the reason that the Ministry of Educational Transformation is focused on addressing inclusive education in a comprehensive and strategic way so that we can meet the needs of all students with special education needs. And we are dedicated, I will tell you, I have a dedicated team here and at the Ministry of Educational Transformation to creating a bright future for every child. So this policy is one that will future-proof the education system. We have to make sure that no single child is left behind. No child is left behind. And this is what Dr. Gibbs will speak with you about, all the ways that we are going to ensure that no child is left behind. It also addresses diverse learning needs. We know that our students face learning challenges, including physical disabilities, it might be intellectual or sensory, and some of our students have socio and emotional barriers. So we have to be able to cater to them, as well as those students who are on the other end of the spectrum, those who are exceedingly gifted. This policy will promote social cohesion and reduce stigma. When we think about inclusive education, children will get to understand one another. Teachers will get to understand students more. Teachers will even get to understand other teachers more. So it will foster the social integration that is needed, and it will cause us to be able to break down the barriers that exist because we simply don't understand. It will also improve overall education quality because, as I said before, the education system will not just be benefiting some students, as it does now, but it will benefit all of the learners. It will build teacher and school capacity. It will strengthen the relationship that we have with parents and the community, because we know that parents of children with disabilities often struggle. They think that nobody understands them. And I believe that once our teachers and our school community understands what disabilities are out there and what giftedness really is, that, as I said before, we'll break down the barriers and be able to reach out to parents and communicate with them in a way that will allow all persons involved to benefit. It aligns with our regional and global best practices, the legal and human rights obligations as well. For us, the policy will go beyond compliance. It is a moral, social, and economic imperative. It is something that we must do. We are no longer going to be just talking about it. It is something that we want to see materialize in our school. But before it can become material, we have to have the policy and we have to get your feedback so that we can make sure that we are doing what we set out to do. So all in all, this is part of our education transformation agenda initiative, where we want to create a firm education system, one that is fair, inclusive, relevant, and modern for the benefit of all. I thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And I think one of the really great things that you would have mentioned today that I think is a really great takeaway for everyone is that you have said that it is a national imperative, something that must be done. And I think that it's an idea whose time has come, and here to share with us the draft policy, its implications, its contents, its broad views, and so on for your consideration is Dr. Janice Gibbs. Dr. Gibbs is a long-time advocate and proponent of inclusive education, and in our work with her, we have found her to be passionate about the subject matter that she proposes. And so, Dr. Gibbs, it's a pleasure to have you with us this afternoon, and we would like then for you to be able to share with us some aspects of the policy and then entertain a few questions with regard to its contents and so on. Thank you very much, Dr. Gibbs.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Chief Education Officer, Dr. Ramona Archer-Bradshaw, the Director of the Change Management Unit, Dr. Paul Murphy, the Chair of our Technical Working Group, Dr. Junie Lynch, colleagues, former colleagues from the Ministry of Education, the members of the disabled community who are here, parents, teachers, those in the public domain who are extremely interested in this initiative, our technical staff, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. My name is Janice Gibbs, and it is my pleasure this evening to present to you the findings that we have gathered with the data that we have been able to accumulate pertaining to the inclusive education policy, and to present the draft as it is as part of our process in disseminating the information regarding this policy. I'm going to try to do so sitting down today because the screen is behind me, so I cannot stand. The Ministry of Educational Transformation has partnered with the Skills for the Future IDB project to make all of this possible this evening. In terms of our pathway or overview, we are going to look at the background and the current situation that students are facing in our schools. We're looking at our inclusion philosophy, the basis of which is a human rights approach. We're looking at the key aspects of any policy that will be established in a small island developing state such as ours. We're looking at the roles and responsibilities of our key stakeholders, the various exceptionalities that we are looking to facilitate, the use of the individual education plans and the group education plans that we are introducing, the transition planning or the way forward for every student in our system, conclusions and recommendations, and thereafter you will be given an opportunity to give your questions and your suggestions, because as part of this process we are still formulating the policy. So we want your feedback, we need your input in order that we can develop the best document possible. The documents that we are going to be using, that we have used, I should say, span the local, the regional, and the international circuit, including the 2022 to 2027 strategic plan for the Ministry of Education, the 2023 to 2030 national policy for improving the lives of persons with disabilities in Barbados, the vision statement of the Ministry of Education, the model special needs inclusive education policy and strategy that was developed by the Caribbean Development Bank, the conventions on the rights of persons with disabilities, conventions on the rights of the child, to name a few. Now, why do we need to transform? We would say, or many persons would say, that we have what can be termed as an equal opportunity education system, whereby every student is exposed to the same examination called the Common Entrance Examination to transition them to the secondary provision that we have. However, we have been advised that we should seek to make the education system more equitable. By that we mean we want to give the supports to each child that this particular child needs. Each child is an individual and they need specific supports. So where there are deficits, that we should shore up these deficits in an equitable manner, which is very good. But what about if we take it a step further and we present our education system as a barrier-free education system, whereby there are no barriers to education for any of our children? That's the goal for the Educational Transformation Ministry. Now, in terms of background, we have historically been an education system where we were privileging those students who were academically gifted. So much so that even now, in our post-colonial era, we still have that focus on students at 11 years old, those students who we term the top boy and the top girl in our Barbados secondary schools entrance examination results. The media really takes that down the road and they run with it every single year. So much so that those students are the ones that we are seeing in our newspapers and seeing featured on our televisions. And we don't want to take away from their achievements, but there are several other students who also took that examination. As a result of our focus, however, And as a result of the way that we treat the results of our Barbados Secondary Schools entrance examination, the older grammar schools are given the students with the highest marks, and consequently, as they go to 5th form and 6th form, those older grammar schools will be the ones that we see being endowed with the scholarships and the exhibitions and going overseas to get their further qualifications in whatever profession they have chosen. As a result of that, there are several students, approximately 60% of our students, who leave that examination and those results feeling as though they themselves are failures. And those are the unseen results that we do not really highlight in our press and our newspapers. As a result, also, several of our teachers in our newer secondary schools feel demoralized and disaffected because they have a steady stream of non-academic students year in, year out, that they need to deliver a curriculum to these students. And sometimes those students are not ready. They're not mentally ready. And sometimes it is very difficult for our teachers to deliver that curriculum because of the fact that they are students that may have invisible disabilities that have gone undiagnosed. Several of our secondary school students, approximately 60% of them, are also leaving school without certification. And the students with other gifts and talents are not being fully recognized. The students in our special schools are limited to a primary level education, and there are no, or very few qualifying exit examinations for these students because they have been exposed only to a primary level education. I pause to acknowledge the presence of our Minister of Educational Transformation, the Honorable Chad Blackman. Good evening, sir. We have received a very valuable data set from our Student Support Services unit in the Ministry of Educational Transformation. And it outlined a spreadsheet of referrals that the Student Support Services had gathered between September 2021 and September 2024. These students presented with a range of exceptionalities, including autism spectrum disorders, attention deficit disorders, academic difficulties, which would be a broad heading, hearing impairments, visual impairments, social and behavioral disorders, global developmental delays, and medical challenges that impacted on their education. Excuse me. In total, 1,672 referrals were received by the Student Support Services unit within that 3-year period. And of these, 8%, 127 of them, were students with a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. Those were the ones who were diagnosed. Also, 10% of those students presented with speech or language challenges. 23% of those students presented with behavioral and emotional challenges, whereby they will need long-term counseling and support emotionally. And a whopping 28%, 469 students, were referred with academic challenges as the reason for their referral. Now, under that broad heading of academic challenges, those of you in education would know that this is simply a broad term that denotes that the child is failing in the academic setting. But we don't yet know, we have not yet concretized why the child is failing and what is the distinct diagnosis or assessment that this child would be presenting with. So 469 of those students are already referred in our Student Support Services unit, and there needs to be deeper investigation to find out where the challenges lie and why those students are having the academic difficulties. We held several stakeholder meetings and interviews with the staff of the University of the West Indies, the Barbados Community College, the Samuel Jackman Prescott Institute, the Barbados Vocational Training Board. Specialist teachers were also interviewed from all of our special schools and units. The parents of students in our current system were interviewed. Past students with exceptional conditions were interviewed. We pulled together some of the service groups under the Barbados Council for the Disabled, including the National United Society for the Blind and the Barbados Horizon Deaf Charity. And there were some recurring themes coming out when we brought together these varying stakeholders. There were issues of physical access, transportation issues, issues in accessing the curriculum as it stood. There were issues with bullying, both peers and teachers. The students with exceptionalities declared that they had been bullied. And there was a situation that was also brought to our attention in that particular area, where there was a young lady, a little girl, she's 8 years old. She was born with a hair lip, and she has had 2 operations so far from the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. Her speech is still not as clear as the other students in the class, and it is unfortunate that in her situation, there's a teacher. I'm not saying that she understands what is happening, but that teacher mimics the little girl who is having the challenge with her speech due to the hair lip. The mother, her heart was breaking when she told me about it, and my heart broke too when I heard. There were also issues with lack of services. The services like the physical therapies, the speech and language therapies, the occupational therapies, because there was such a long waiting list, many of the students were waiting for years before they were serviced. There were issues with resources that would be specific to our students with varying exceptionalities. Some of those resources were not readily available to our students, and there were clear rights violations in our investigations, in which there were students who, when they were accepted at certain schools and they turned up for their orientation or they turned up for the first morning of school, they were met with very negative comments that suggested that they were not fit for that particular school, and that was the school in their neighborhood. Our education system we have a current continuum of provision in our system, whereby we have general education classes across our system that makes provision for students with disabilities of a physical and a sensory nature. So students who may be in wheelchairs, or students who may use walkers, students who may have hearing impairments or be totally deaf, students who may be blind, are included in our general education classes along with their non-disabled peers. We also have pull-out or partial inclusion programs. These are programs at our mainstream primary schools and some of our secondary schools, at least 7 of our secondary schools, where students with mild learning disabilities or mild learning difficulties are facilitated with the specialist teacher for a part of the day, and then they are included into the mainstream general education class with their non-disabled peers. We also have full units. By that we mean those units in our mainstream schools where the students with moderately severe intellectual or behavioral challenges and a variety of challenges are facilitated from 9 till 3 in that full unit. Schools like the Charles F. Broome, the Eagle Hall, the Ellerton, and so on, those are the schools where a full unit is established, where the students with exceptionalities can be facilitated by specialist teachers who are trained to assist them with their challenges. We also have purpose-built special schools, schools where students with severe sensory and behavioral disabilities can also be facilitated and given a quality education by a trained staff. So schools such as the Erdiston Special School, the Ann Hill School, the Irving Wilson School, the New Horizons Academy, and the Alma Paris Academy. Those are schools where students can be given the full attention of a trained staff. And there are private schools where the government of Barbados partners with some of our private institutions to facilitate students whose conditions are said to be profound or who are incontinent. So schools like the Challoner School, the Learning Center, and the Derek Smith School, those are schools that partner with the government to assist our students and to give them also a quality education. What is our inclusion philosophy? What is the philosophy that underpins this inclusive education draft policy? This policy aims to provide a quality education which is inclusive and equitable for all students, and which promotes the opportunities for lifelong learning for all of our citizens in an accepting and enriching environment. That is the linchpin that holds this inclusion philosophy together. Now, during the 2022-2023 academic year, the Caribbean Development Bank engaged the services of Dr. Joan Spencer Hernandez and her team to look at the 7 territories in our Caribbean area who needed support and assistance in framing an inclusive education policy document. And Dr. Spencer Hernandez and her team, they were able to formulate what we would call a template, what we would call a framework for the region, for those 7 territories, of which Barbados was one of them, whereby we could look at this policy, this framework, and see the areas that her team would have highlighted that need to be addressed in order for a policy to be properly delivered and properly executed in our country. One of the first issues that Dr. Spencer Hernandez and her team were able to highlight is the lack of a legislative framework in our island of Barbados. By that we mean a Barbados Education Act that reflects the inclusivity that we are promoting in the Educational Transformation Ministry. So the Education Act needs to be revised, and I understand that that is in progress. Data collection and cybersecurity was another area highlighted by the researchers, by the consultants, who suggested that we needed to have the data in one place, accessible to those persons who need to use the data, and secured such that it could not be breached or hacked by those persons who make mischief. We are in the process also of having such data collected. Assessments and data-driven decision-making. We need to have our students assessed in the early, because early intervention is critical, and based on the results of the assessments, we want to be able to make the best decisions for our students in terms of putting them in the correct frameworks so that they can enjoy a quality education. Building human capital. We recognize that many of our professionals, many of our teachers, our tutors, our demonstrators at the post-secondary level definitely need training. They need training in how to facilitate a diverse classroom where students with varying exceptionalities may be working along with other students who may be typically developing. So we need to have some broad training sessions, training programs established so that our tutors and our teachers and our facilitators, our demonstrators, all of those persons who interface with our students can benefit from that training. And this training will need to be in a structure that is legislated so that people cannot opt out of the training, but that they will have to be a part of the training once they are part of our educational system. Full family support services. We need to have our social workers in place so that those families which have a student who might be a minor or an adult with an exceptionality or a challenge of some sort, those social workers can come alongside those families and can help them, support them, help them understand how to meet their appointments, how to meet how to negotiate the systems, let's call it that, how to negotiate the systems of services that they will meet on a daily basis with their students. So the social worker comes alongside the parent or the caregiver and helps and assists in making sure that the students get the services that they need. Curriculum adaptation and the pedagogical shifts are already in train. We are happy to report that our curriculum has broadened in many areas. We have our coding and robotics on stream. The digital literacy is there. We are looking at our blue and our green economy, the Oceania, yes. All of those that are important to us as a small island developing state, all of that knowledge we are bringing to our children, and this is critical. This is very important. Access to technologies already in progress. Our children are getting those exposures to the World Wide Web and to all the information gateways. Those are in place. Institutional strengthening and the multi-sectoral partnerships between the Ministry of Educational Transformation, the Ministry of Health and Wellness, the Ministry of Transport and Works in terms of transportation, the Ministry of People Empowerment and Elder Affairs. Those areas are going to be strengthened. Those areas are going to have more structure so that that multi-sectoral partnership can be more smoothly undertaken. And an improved access to special education and the expansion of our local services. This is an area that we ourselves in developing our policy document, this is an area that really became critical when we had our stakeholder meetings, because our needs far outstrip the provision. What are the policy requirements? Our guiding principles are universal access, lifelong learning, the full potential of the student realized, the support systems set in place for our students, and full participation of all of our students. What are the roles and our responsibilities of our key stakeholders? The Ministry of Educational Transformation, they are going to lead this charge. And they are very ready, they are raring to go, they are very, very keen on ensuring that this transformation takes place in our education system, whereby every student, as you heard the chief say earlier, no student will be left behind. Every student is to be facilitated to the highest level of his or her potential so that each student can have a stake in our education system. Not just those that are academically gifted, but students with other giftings, students that have so many other talents that have gone under the radar. Our society, our economy needs these gifts, and we are going to see how we can support and realize all of these gifts in our students. The training is at ministry, the services, the extra staff, the additional staff support is at ministry, and you've already heard from the chief that they've already started to put those measures in place. And we are heartened by that, because we know that we need those additional psychologists, we need those additional speech language persons, we need those additional social workers, we need those additional specialists in those areas to help support the education of our children. And the Urdeston Teachers Training College is not going to be left out. They are going to also expand the offerings of their training programs for the teachers and the tutors at our post-secondary levels, our teachers in our primary and pre-primary levels, all of those who work in education. There's going to be an offering for all of these who interface with our students. Principals, administrators of primary and secondary schools, there's going to be those leadership, educational leadership training modules for them, not only to come and wet their feet, but to be immersed, to understand what it means to have an inclusive educational institution, what that looks like when all students at that institution can say, yes, I am being facilitated and it is a quality education that is being delivered. Classroom teachers, this is where the rubber will hit the road, of course, because the classroom teachers are those that will interface with our minor students as well as our senior students at our post-secondary institutions. Support staff, those teaching assistants, those parent volunteers, those that are going to come alongside the teacher in the classroom to assist those students who have exceptional conditions, to assist in whatever ways they are directed, such to help and to assist those students with their education on a daily basis, to help them complete their tasks, to do the hand over hand, to do the molding, to do the writing, to do the tracing, all of those things. We are going to have our support staff coming alongside our teachers for these purposes. The health and social care professionals that I just mentioned, the persons that are offering the developmental pediatrics, those that are offering the psychiatric assistance for our students who may have mental health challenges, those social workers and counselors who are counseling those students who have experienced traumas, all of those professionals will be coming alongside the Ministry of Educational Transformation to assist our students. So it is not just a ministry effort. It is going to be a national effort because we are going to be educating our children to the highest potential possible for each and every one of them. Parents, guardians, and caregivers, you are not left out because your role and responsibility is vital to continue the work that is being done in our schools. We are going to let you know exactly where we want to go in terms of the pathway for your child, and we are going to be soliciting your assistance to help that child at home, to help that child with his or her academics, to help that child with his or her therapies in terms of the things that you can reasonably do in a home context, to help that child to know that he or she is valued and that you have time to work with that child and to give that child some additional support, additional to that which is being done in our schools. The home is extremely important, and we are encouraging you, I'm choosing my words very carefully, we are encouraging you parents to partner with the schools, to partner with the Ministry of Educational Transformation to assist the child, to support the child's advancement in whatever areas of gifting the child may have, so that that child knows that he or she has the support of parents and has the support of the schools. I'm moving on. The various exceptionalities that are going to be facilitated, and these are just a few. These are the ones that you saw reflected on the data set that was given to us by the Ministry of Educational Transformation's Student Support Services Unit, the students with attention deficit disorders, those with autism, those who are blind, the students who are deaf, the students who are gifted and talented, those with intellectual disabilities, specific learning disabilities like dyslexia and dysgraphia and dyscalculia, students with social, emotional, and behavioral disorders, and students who have experienced trauma in their lives, students for whom a significant member of their circle has passed away or is critically ill, or they have seen violence in their neighborhoods. This is traumatic for our students, and we are going to need to support our students in these areas. I move into the individual education plans and the group education plans and the uses of these. I said earlier that the teachers are the ones who are going to be the rubber that hits the road. They are going to be the on-the-ground people. They are going to be the ones who will interface with your students, your children. And they are going to be using two major tools in order to facilitate your children: individual education plans and group education plans. The individual education plans are those that are developed to support the child individually, to assist the child as a specific learner. There are certain challenges that a child may be experiencing in the context of education that may be specific to him or her. The individual education plan targets these areas that the child is going to need support in, and that plan carries the child through the education system with these goals to assist the child in the particular area. So a child who is blind is going to have an individual education plan that will assist him or her to access the curriculum as a blind student. So tactile, much computer work with the JAWS technology and so on, the computer that will speak, the screen reader, the orbit reader, all of that will be at that child's disposal, but the child will have a specific individual education plan so that his needs or her needs can be met. And the individual education plan extends beyond just the academic areas and also targets the therapies, the medical interventions, and the social interventions that the child will need. They will all be noted on the individual education plan. Now, the group education plan is the one that we are now promoting as an initiative for the inclusion of students in our classrooms, whereby the approach utilizes the group work, the project method, the collaborative teaching. Teachers can come together and work with their varying groups. There is a sense of belonging. There is a social and behavioral skill development. There is this area whereby all of the students are seen as valuable players who are bringing something to the table. So some students talk well, they speak a lot. And we are not going to be telling them to shut up or stop talking. We are going to let them speak so that they can deliver what is happening in the group. There are some students who write well, some who draw well, some who make good models and good inventions to help with ease of life, let us say. And these students are going to be included in this group education plan. It is a strictly, purely academic document, but it will say where this group of students is going, what pathway this group of students is going to take. The advantages of an individual education plan are that they are specific to the individual child and they support the potential and the development of that child. They are tailor-made, but they go beyond the scope of academic needs to the social, medical, and the psychological recommendations of the professionals. The advantages of the group educational plans is that it fosters a collaborative learning environment. It's interactive, engaging, hands-on. It's real-world experiences that we are bringing to the child, not just in the classroom, outside. The science, the social studies, they will come alive in the group educational plan. There's a wide range of applications. It can be scaled according to the group that you have, and it is a supportive atmosphere that we are creating for all of our students, whereby they can all feel a part rather than isolated. They can all feel a part of the educational process. I want to close by speaking about the transition plan that we have put in the draft policy. We want to have a transition plan for all students to prepare them for the next level of either instruction or employment. I'm talking about all students across the board, not just the students with exceptional conditions, but all students can benefit from transition planning, whereby the school that he or she is currently at and is moving towards either higher education, further education, skills-based program, or whether they're going to the world of work, that the school makes the liaisons with the next institution or the next area or the next person that could be that next business that can be liaised with to assist the student in being a part or an apprentice or an intern. Some liaison must take place for each student who is moving from one educational institution to another, because we cannot just leave the students there, give them the graduation scroll and say, have a good life, good luck out there. This has not worked. They have been transitioning to the block, and we have to stop that particular transition. That is the one that really is very detrimental. So we want to let them know that there's support for them as they move to the next level of their development. Because if we're talking lifelong learning, it means that we must support them to the next level and the next level and the next level, so that they know that there's someone or some school or some institution looking out for their well-being and assisting them in making this transition, giving them the skills that they need, the workplace skills, sharpening their job and social skills, helping them with the on-the-job training, the internships or the apprenticeships. I don't really like that word, but you know what I mean, where they go and they are getting job experience in a particular area. Because the end game for us looking on as educators, the end game for our students is independent living and social and economic participation. Conclusions and recommendations: greater access to mainstream education, attention to infrastructure and physical access, relevant training opportunities, the broadening of those, greater access to modern technologies, assessment and data-driven decision-making, full family support services, broader, more flexible flexible curriculum, institutional strengthening, enhancement of our human and material resources, and more interactive or activity-based classroom practices. Inclusive education is apps, access, participation, and support. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I await your questions.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes? No? Okay. Right. The minister will just give his address, and then we'll open the floor for questions and comments, okay?
Good evening to everybody. Firstly, let me say how pleased I am that you're here this evening with us. Is it on now?
Yeah.
All right, so it wasn't on then. Okay. All right, once again, good evening, everybody. Firstly, let me say how pleased I am that you're here to join us for this consultation. Of course, part of the transformation exercise of our education sector isn't just consultation for consultation's sake, but is to ensure that we move the country along with us as the driver of transformation for education in the pursuit of making sure that this country, and we set a very bold ambition of creating the #1 education system in the world within the next 7 years. I repeat, we set the bold ambition and vision of creating for Barbados, yes, an education system that has done well for all of us, but part of the transformation and the ideology driving the transformation is to ensure that as the world moves at a very rapid pace, that our education system, which anchors the country's development, moves at that pace as well, to keep abreast and oftentimes ahead, anticipating where the world will go. And part of that transformation, therefore, not just to say that you're #1 for #1's sake, but it's really to make sure that we give every child in this country the best chance at being a globally competitive citizen. And part of that, therefore, includes ensuring that inclusivity goes to the very heart of the policy, goes to the very heart of the infrastructure, goes to the very heart of the teaching and pedagogy, and the new ways of doing things in skills-based learning, and ensuring that children, irrespective of if they're exceptionally gifted or if they're challenges, that we can provide a framework for them that will allow them to maximize their skill set and their potential in a way that is also reflective of a very progressive country, a country that is a republic, and a country that continues to see its citizens as the cornerstone for its development. And therefore want to publicly commend our team who work assiduously in ensuring that we have a robust policy as part of the transformation that can not just make the country proud, but can move us into further 21st century development and to make all of our people on the cutting edge of global development by engaging roots. And why do I start there? We are a country, of course, small in physical size, large ocean state, if you look at it, depends on how you look at it. But the country's future requires that Barbados, working, of course, with our brothers and sisters in the Caribbean, this region, if we're to continue to provide a quality of life for our citizens, we have to make sure that education is seen even more so than it has been. And to the region's credit, education has been the anchor. But we now have to sometimes retool the anchor in a way that allows for us now to build out where we're going. So that's why you're seeing significant emphasis on the retraining of our teachers. You've heard a number of presentations so far this evening. Our teachers continue to be at the forefront of the transformation as well. But when you're talking about inclusion and looking at the gifted children and children with different types of challenges, we have to make sure that our teachers have the necessary tools before them so as to be able to treat and to be able to spot the talent and children with challenges and to give them the best opportunity and chances to be able to thrive. And why do I say that? I want to use an example for when I was at law school in the United Kingdom. There was a young man who graduated at the top of the class in my year. Brilliant legal mind, exceptionally gifted. But on the spectrum of autism, he was one of the highest. But the reason why he could not just come through primary school in the UK and secondary school in the UK and the university and then to graduate at the top of the class is that, of course, the systems were there from a very early stage that allowed for the system to, and by the system I mean the teachers and the infrastructure, to spot that there was a challenge, but equally, notwithstanding there was a challenge, there was an immense gift. And therefore, the entire ecosystem was able to move that child along into the adult that he now is today. And why am I saying this, and to bring a parallel here? We have a duty as a country, and certainly as the ministry that drives education in our country, to make sure that wherever a child is at, and God places that child here on earth, that the system is a conduit that, notwithstanding where you are, allows for you to grow and develop your skill set. And more, the country is going to now see, and we are embarking on this as a ministry, working, of course, with other line ministries. For a long time, we've looked at the development, sometimes in the context of health. And what do I mean? We all know when you're born, you get your green paper at the hospital, and up to a certain age, you can map where the child's physical and health development is going. But we've never done that for education. But the science and the data shows, and we're talking about data and scientific delivery of education, shows that between the ages of 2, 3, and 5, those are the key years that everything that we all know, even as adults, we learn in that phase. And therefore, it means that we have a duty also, that notwithstanding that, yes, we focus on the health and development of the child, we have to look at the intellectual side of the child and bring that child along. So one of the things that the ministry is working assiduously now to do is to ensure that every parent, every family, with education and health moving in the same direction, have at their disposal an app which allows for parents to, from the earliest stage, map where that child is going on a development trajectory, so that the health practitioners, the education practitioners, all see where child X or child Y is going. So the early testing and screening, of course, is part of it. And as I said, in order to create the number one, you have to also ensure that down in the roots, all of the old structures that are not fit for purpose are removed. So this transformation is also, in my view, a necessary surgery. I'm certainly not a surgeon by profession, and as far as I'm aware, none of my team here and the audience are, but you understand where I'm going. Surgery in the context of not just saving the patient. We're not trying to just save Barbados. No, we're trying to transform it. So we're going in and removing things that, keeping the things that are working, things that are not working, and things, therefore, that can be of significant benefit whilst we pursue. So I start there and frame this exercise and consultation in those ways, so as to ensure that we understand that if a child is here or here, notwithstanding 1 or 2 or 3 different sets of parameters, we have to make sure that they have the best chance at becoming the best in life. And it's not just about getting into a good school. It's not just about getting CXCs and CAPE associate degree, bachelor's, master's, PhD. Whilst those things are necessary, they're not sufficient. And what do I mean? Barbados, in order for us to continue to, as I said, provide the quality of life that we've enjoyed for the last 59, 60 years of our independence, and particularly now in the context of republic, we have to create a knowledge-based economy because that's our comparative advantage more than anything else. And why do I say that? This country has placed significant premium in terms of our education. Irrespective of administration over the years, significant sums of investment has gone into education. And therefore, we have a high surplus of persons with certifications. But the certifications in Barbados throughout the last 6 decades have served us in the context of providing us with very good jobs. But the future of this economy and the future of the global economy requires for us to be able to now spot global challenges and to create global solutions. And how do you therefore do that is to ensure that every person has the ability to be prepared not for the world of work only, but prepared for the world of business, world of culture, world of innovation and ideas. And the future global economy, when I was in the ILO, and I perhaps need to find it that we can share it perhaps at a future consultation, there is a report in the ILO which states that the skill set of the future, and it's funny that this is called skills of the future, the skill set of the future requires economies to be driven by those who have ideas. That is the new gold. That is the new bauxite. That is the new whatever you want to call it. And therefore, we've already had that as a nation. But how do we now take it from there and move it in a very systematic railway, ensuring that all within our society, once they want to succeed, have within their possession the tools to do so. So with those words, I want to encourage the country to continue to support the ministry as we ensure that the transformation exercise of our education is going in the way it needs to go, bearing in mind that this is an exercise, of course, that is transforming an education system that has been here for decades, underscored by a lot of historical perspectives that now need to come into the 21st century if we're to remain competitive, if we're to remain ahead of the pack. And the last thing I want to say, and I assure you this is the last thing at this point, part and parcel of the transformation agenda and exercise has to be that, and you know, here in Barbados, whenever we achieve a certain level of success, part of our failure as a nation is that we take the success and we get comfortable. We are the best in this, and we're the best in that. And that is good to be the best. And as I said, we set that bold agenda of #1 in 7 years globally. But when you achieve it, what do? You continue to evolve to be the best. Because countries will look to you and be inspired by what you've done. And they will try to emulate you and oftentimes surpass you. And we have to be in that constant mode of being the best. So it must not be that in 7 years we've attained that, or in 6 or 10 or whatever, and we become comfortable. Transformation has to be an ongoing change of success constantly. Because the world that we live in today will not look the same in 5 years, in 7 years. And therefore, our education system must now be able to keep abreast, as I said, of that change, whilst inherently still having at its core Barbadian values, that Bayesian-ness. So it's not a copy and paste, and that's why I want to commend the team, and in particular our chief, who continues to ensure that as we transform, our transformation, yes, while we look at examples around the world of best practices, it is not, and it will not be a copy and paste of anybody else's education system. You look at other systems and pick out what is good, but you Bayesianize the experience to our society so that it is relevant for us. That has to be the key. And why do I say that? I can go in acting school, they do it. I can go and learn how to speak with the best American accent. But my natural default is Bayesian. My Bayesian accent is my natural accent. I can be taught how to speak in an American accent or a British accent or Polish accent. But if you tell me to be myself and give me the tools to adapt, then my best self is my default. Similarly, in terms of the education transformation, it must not be Barbados' education system is a carbon copy or a set of copy and paste from other systems. It must be that we look around the world, pick some of the best ideas, but equally create some of the best ideas from Barbados and weave it into the system to create a globally competitive, Barbadian-anchored, world-class education system that benefits the country. So with those few words, Madam Chair, I want to wish everybody a fantastic evening, and I look forward to the discussions coming from the floor, both here in the room, and I understand we're online. Yeah? So thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. And we're really heartened that you would have outlined a very future-focused policy in terms of best fit for our country. And as we move forward, we would want to be able to embrace your vision collectively as we move forward. At this time, ladies and gentlemen, we will want to be able to invite comment, queries, questions from the floor, and we would want to invite persons at this time to do so. We would want to establish a protocol. Please, when you come to the microphone, which is located at the center of the aisle, we would want you to be able to state your name. If there's an organization that you represent, we would want you to be also be able to do this, and then we would want you to present your question. We would want to ask that you are short on the preamble and long on the question, if possible. Thank you very much.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Alison Elcott. I am a parent. When I first started hearing about education transformation, there were three emotions that I experienced. The first is excitement. And a lot of what I heard this evening reinforced that excitement. I'm excited by the idea of not leaving a child behind and giving children the ability to see their full potential. And it makes me hopeful because I can just imagine the Barbados that we can create in a few years if we're able to succeed at transforming our education. But I'm fearful. I'm fearful because I have a nephew who's 31 years old, and he was supposed to be among the first not to do an 11+. And we're still having a conversation about changing the 11+. So I am fearful, but I focus more on the hopefulness. I'm hopeful. My interest is more on neurodiversity in education, ADHD, autism, dyslexia, etc. And I saw in the information presented that there's not a lot in place to support children and parents. So I'm excited again about the idea of individual education plans. My question really is that, or at least I want to encourage the ministry to not wait for a perfect plan and a perfect policy to get started, because 7 years will be here very quickly. I wish I was Q, if you were into Star Trek, that I could snap my fingers and take us into the future so we could be there. But I'm hoping that you will not be waiting for a perfect policy and a perfect plan to get started on dealing with neurodiversity. 20% of a population is known to be neurodivergent. I suspect that the vast majority of people who are neurodivergent in Barbados are undiagnosed because access to diagnosis is really, really difficult. I also believe that my theory, I haven't seen any research yet, but my theory is that neurodiversity may actually be a major problem and why we have a lot of workplace conflict. There's a lot of research that it is a reason behind a lot of vandalism and delinquency and crime. So is there going to be a plan to move forward with mechanisms to improve access to diagnosis, to put measures in place to know from September, from January, to immediately address the issues of neurodivergent children in our education system?
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask from inclusive education policy framework, Dr. Gibbs, if you can respond, and then I'd like to ask the Chief from a ministry's perspective in terms of going forward, what your thoughts are on the question that was just posed.
Thank you for your question. It is embedded within the policy that our approach to the assessment and diagnosis of our students be ramped up in terms of making sure that there's access to those professionals. Those professionals, okay, be dead in the water. I can talk like a, okay, good, we're back. That those professionals who offer those services, we need more. We need more professionals that do offer those services. But it is embedded in the policy that those areas of professional endeavor be also enhanced such that if we do not have on island the local, the amount of people that are needed, the numbers that are needed, that we can borrow on short-term contract some from the region so that we can at least get the diagnoses up and running, because we cannot move forward with a quality education unless we know where we're going with the child. We can no longer be guessing. And early intervention is critical. Therefore, we need as early as possible to have those developmental pediatricians in place, and those speech and language therapists, the psychologists, those persons who are diagnosticians in place. There's need for all of those professional areas to be enhanced. And if we can get that in place, we will see a different set of data, because like you, I suspect that it's more than the 20% that is normally being touted.
Thank you very much for the question. I want to share with you that I agree with you, Dr. Gibbs. Intervention is exceedingly important. What we need to focus on first, though, is the diagnosis. The teachers are the ones who are in the classrooms with our children every single day. We have to build capacity there. The minister said it. We have to build capacity there. We have to expose them to what autism is, what dyspraxia is, what dyslexia is, what the signs are. And with that education will come referrals, will come changing the way that pedagogy is approached. So instead of standing up in front of the class and delivering a lecture, the teacher will know, well, this child is a little different. The child likes to be on the move, so let's do a little field trip on the outside of the school or on the school grounds where they go and discover something and then come back in the classroom and come and share. The major thing for us is to make sure that our teachers are educated. This is the start. And this is the reason that we're investing so much money in professional development. I shared earlier that we had several autism workshops for teachers and multisensory workshops for teachers. We had one dealing with school positive behavior management here just last week. And the kinds of things that these teachers were exposed to opened their eyes. We will have a session the ending of August for all principals, because principals need to know too, so that they can educate. So we want to build capacity there. We have to walk and chew gum. So while we're doing that, we're going to try to get more specialists in. We have the additional psychologists, we have the counselors, the social work. We have everybody right now on board to try to help our children. I spoke about the way that teachers teach. And this is the reason that we as a ministry are focusing on the project-based learning approach, because it goes beyond children knowing facts to regurgitate them for an exam. Children ask questions. They're on the move. They're inquiring. They're problem solving. They're cooperating. They're communicating. So in a project-based classroom, you hardly see the teacher, you will never, see the teacher as a sage on the stage just spouting out information. The children are moving around and doing things and being their best, authentic selves. And this is the kind of classroom that we want to see. And this is the reason the ministry has invested in training over 700 teachers in project-based learning. And we will continue to build capacity so that project-based learning is a major feature in every school. But you know, things take time. But we're going to continue to work and move in that direction.
Thank you very much, Chief. There are a number of questions until we have another person who will come to the mic. There are some questions that are coming to us for persons who are watching online. One of the questions that has been asked is that the person is saying, the policy sounds great. What is the timeline for implementation? And there's another follow-up as well that says, has any thought been given to appropriate classroom sizes going forward? I think the first, I think, Chief, you may be able to touch both of them. That's the timeline for implementation and appropriate classroom sizes going forward in the context of inclusive education.
Yeah. A very good question again, but I don't want to focus on the exact time for implementation. I can tell you it will occur in the near future, but what has to happen first is that we need to have consultation. We need to know what we're looking at in terms of the policy, and then we have to see how we are going to implement moving forward. But the fact that we're at this stage, having a draft policy, and having discussion, means that we're closer to implementation than further away from it. That's what I can say. I don't want to give you an exact date, because I know with these things, people latch on to dates, and if you go one day after, you know, they say something. So, but know that we're working every day towards that. The second question?
And the second question would be, in terms of classroom sizes, any thought being given to appropriate classroom sizes going forward in the context of inclusive education?
Yes, most certainly that is a consideration. We have to take into consideration the fact that there is a declining population. So naturally, we're having reduced classroom sizes in most of our schools. Our ministry is actively looking at the teacher-student ratio to see how we can make it best for our students. Believe it or not, when we look at all of the students across the system and we compare that to the number of teachers across the system, the ratio of teachers to students is 1 to 12, right? So we're actively seeking to rationalize that across our system.
We have a participant at the mic. Ma'am, come in.
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Chantal Morgan, and I am a literacy specialist. I do work with neurodiverse learners from early childhood into adolescence. I want to really commend the ministry on this draft inclusive education policy. I just want some clarification on 2 points. I noticed that there is a lack of information in terms of the implementation phase and consistency across board. I'm going to explain what I mean by that. Currently, you may have a student needing access arrangements within a school. One school would give the child 15 minutes per hour following the CSEC protocol. Another school may say just 15 minutes regardless of the length of the examination. So how do we ensure that there's consistency across the board? Because we don't just want that there's diagnosis, and then after the diagnosis, we say we give them intervention, but they will need access arrangements if they're going to be participating in any testing, whether at school or regional. How do we ensure that across the board, regardless of whatever school you're at, there's a protocol in place that they know not only how much time is given, but even in terms of the space that is provided for the learner. And we have some instances where the spaces being provided are not conducive to testing conditions, and therefore it makes it moot that you have an access arrangement if you're being disrupted throughout the time that you're given to complete an exam. And I know that everything is a process, but we sometimes see a policy practice divide, where in paper things will look, like this is a feasible situation, but how do we ensure that when it comes to the classroom circumstance, that what is supposed to be happening, everybody is literally moving at the same pace. Also the inclusive education policy, I noticed that the requirements for the special educators...
Are you going to a next question? Because I'm sure that
This is the next question. This is the last question.
Could you hold that one then?
Okay.
Because I would want to give the panel, especially...
A time to answer?
Exactly.
Okay.
So on that particular question, panel, and you are asking the question in terms of how, if I'm hearing you correctly, if I were to summarize what you're asking, you're asking the question, how does the policy come alive with regard to standardization and consistency across the entire school system? That's what I'm hearing you. Yes? I don't know, Chief. Do you want to take that one?
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Thanks again for the question, Chantal.
You're welcome.
Yes. The thing is with policies, they're just policies. But one of the things we recognize is that we have to develop an implementation plan. There needs to be not only a plan, but proper monitoring and evaluation. And you heard the Minister speaking about the transformed education system that we want to see. Accountability measures will be put in place to ensure that principals, teachers, and everybody do what they're supposed to do. Okay? So I want to give you that assurance. So for us, it's not just this policy, but we have clearly thought out how we are going to implement. Of course, we're going to get some more feedback and make some tweaks to that. But we know that we have that draft implementation plan, and then from there, it will be monitoring and evaluation to make sure that every child gets what he or she deserves.
Before you go on to pose the next question, let me also jump in there too. And as you've heard, the solution is really in the question. Not just standardization, but as regulator, Ministry of Education, we have to work with the specialists of where the deficits are for the children. So for example, what is the standard accepted timeline for a child, let's say, that has autism on whatever spectrum, doing an exam? Should they have 5 minutes more, for example, 10 minutes more? And according to what the specialists outside of education have said to education, then we put that, of course, into the protocols. You have the policy, you have the protocol, and then that becomes delivery. But I also want to go a little further. When you look at infrastructure, and you hit the nail on the head, that is why the infrastructural development changes are so key. And the government, as we're doing, is that as we build out and refurbish schools around the country, we're doing so in a way to be matched and aligned with what schools and infrastructure ought to be, that reflects the inclusivity that we're talking about. Because let's face it, our school structures are not currently built for what we're trying to go to. And therefore, year by year, as we're retrofitting our schools, we're doing so in a way that's being cognizant of all these different things, cognizant of also the climate crisis reality. Smaller classroom sizes, yes, of course, smaller population, but even if we had a different population reality, smaller classroom sizes give each student more access to that teacher, and it also gives the teacher more access to that student. So that's why the transformation is key, and I'm happy that we have the head of our transformation team here, because that unit within the ministry is working to ensure that as we transform all the different moving parts, the units and the divisions and the departments within the ministry who have to deal with these things are therefore rolling out bit by bit, systematically, to ensure that these things are done. So the question that you've asked could not have come at a more timely juncture in this evening's discussion, because that's actually happening. As the Chief said, you have the policy, but the delivery and the implementation requires all the stakeholders within not just the ministry, but the experts working parallel with us to ensure that the protocols will guide us.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Minister. I'm very pleased to hear that that policy practice gap will be lessened when the implementation phase comes on board. And my last question is regarding the minimum qualification for the special education practitioner. I noticed that it was a minimum of 5 CXC certifications and then the certification for the interest in special needs from Edison Teachers Training College. And this would be more so a recommendation and a question. I think that if we're looking at something of this magnitude where we're transforming, then we want to ensure that the persons who are dealing with children with difficulties come to the table as best equipped as possible. And the reality is that we have our teachers going into the classroom before they get the training. That is the current state for teachers in the system. But if we're going forward and we're looking to say that we're going to do something differently, then I would like to see teachers receiving that training prior to entering the classroom. And I say this not as an infringement upon those with the 5 CXCs who are teaching, but we need to move beyond 5 CXCs and a certificate in terms of teaching children, especially if we're looking at persons who are neurodivergent, because they're not just going to be academic challenges, they're going to be behavioral challenges as well, and you want individuals who can not just deliver pedagogy, but who can manage the social, the emotional, and the behavioral challenges. So one of the recommendations I would make humbly is that we shift towards training of teachers before they go into the classroom. We already have teachers in the system, so we work to provide those individuals with the training or the upskilling that they need. And I see that you're doing a very vigorous push in terms of professional development, but in terms of new individuals coming into the system, I think it would be better if they're more equipped with the skill set and the knowledge beyond that 5 CXCs and a certification from Edison Teachers Training College, especially if we're going to give them the title of special education practitioner, teacher, whatever the case may be. Once they're coming under that umbrella of special ed, I would like that they are competent. And when I talk about their pedagogy, I want not just the practice of the teaching, but even the thought processes and even how they treat to the children. I know there was a mention of bullying, so we want that we shift not just their teaching, but their thinking as well. And I don't think that 5 CXC certificates and a certificate from Edison would really give them the skill set that they need to do that.
Thank you very much. Dr. Gibbs, perhaps you may want to be able to address the whole interface of teacher and the policy with regard to how this policy affects or is affected by the teacher quality, and then probably, Chief, you may want to respond as well. How does the policy embrace the whole idea of teacher training, teacher efficacy, and so on going forward with relation to inclusive education?
I hope that we are not going to think that the minimum qualification for a teacher to enter the classroom is the qualification that the teacher will continue to have throughout his or her teaching career. I am hoping that we understand that one of the things that we are very emphatic about is continuous professional development of our teachers. Continuous meaning that the areas of training and professional development to which the teachers are going to be exposed are also going to be moving in terms of what the global requirements are going to be looking like, such that we are going to be giving our teachers a quality professional development as well. The entrance requirements that are stated in the policy are simply that, an entrance requirement, because currently, as you said, ma'am, there is the open door policy, which I will tell you I have my challenges with. Therefore, if we have teachers who not only have a basic qualification at the CSEC level, but they also have what is being offered at the Erdiston Teachers Training College in terms of a specific diploma in special education and an understanding that changes their thinking about those students that they will interface with in the classroom setting, it starts the journey for that teacher. It starts that immersion into the area of exceptionality and an understanding of, as you say, the behaviors, the emotional extremes that the children may be experiencing, and so on, not just academics. But that was just a jumping point. That was just a starting motor, so to speak. But it will be continuous for teachers as well in terms of our professional development.
Yes, thank you. I concur with Janice Gibbs, Dr. Janice Gibbs, to a large degree. You spoke about, Chantal, you spoke about pedagogy, and not just pedagogy. But I want to remind you all that your philosophy as a teacher drives your pedagogy. If your philosophy as a teacher is that the children are empty vessels to be filled, all of your activities are going to be that you come in and you tell the students all the time. If your philosophy is that the students are co-creators of knowledge, you're going to come in and the activities are such that the children are going to discover, they're going to inquire, they're going to ask questions. So we are thinking not only about changing pedagogy, but about changing teachers' philosophy. And again, I'm going to speak to Erdiston Teachers Training College specifically, because I know the offerings of the Erdiston Teachers Training College, and every course, every program has a special education needs course. So if you are doing the Bachelor of Education, you have to do a special education needs module. If you're doing the Diploma in Education, whether primary or secondary, you have to do a special education needs module. And while it is good, or it will be good to have a number of special education needs specialists within the school, I would like that every teacher is a teacher of special education needs. Every teacher has to be able to understand the neurodivergence and be able to respond in a way to reach these students, right? So that is why we are investing, as I said earlier, so much money in continuous professional development for our teachers. These are the ones who have already graduated from Erdiston and who may have forgotten or who may not have been exposed several years or decades ago. We're making sure that Erdiston has a suite of continuous professional development courses and opportunities for these teachers to be exposed. Because we, as the Ministry of Educational Transformation, are driven by the philosophy that every child matters.
I'd like to engage you on this one. I think it's important coming from yourself in terms of how you see the teachers of the future with regard to the transformation effort, and how do you look through your lens with regard to this training, this retraining, this continuous professional development. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, thank you. A number of things come to mind as you asked. One, teachers, of course, are the cornerstone of all of this. You can set policies, you can have great infrastructure, but if they don't have the tools, then it's not going to go anywhere. That's one. And as a result of that fact, the training that they receive at the onset in the Erdistons or wherever they come from in the world has to, as I said, continuously evolve to make sure that they're cutting edge. Because for example, if you did a marketing degree in 1997, whilst those tenets of that marketing degree in 1997 may still remain the same in many respects, marketing today is totally different from marketing in 1997. Similarly, You have teachers in the system, of course, who've come through the Erdistons. That's good. But the continued professional development, as we've discussed so far, is of critical importance because why? It gives them the tools for refreshing and learning new modalities of teaching. What are the challenges and opportunities that students face, that they themselves face? And it brings me to the point of what was discussed in the previous question, of qualifications of teachers, whether it be 5 CXCs, 3 CXCs, whatever it is, and the context of special education. And I agree with the Chief wholeheartedly that every teacher should have exposure and training irrespective of what they studied broadly in special education. But I want to go further. As it is called, it's special education. And there should be, in my view, that core element in the teaching profession, a body of experts whose nature is special education. So for example, in law, everybody did the LLB. So you're lawyers. But there are those who specialize in tax law. There are those who specialize in corporate law, data protection law, whose day-to-day job is that area of specialization. Because let's face it, the children with special needs receiving the special education require not just the generalist knowledge and a bit of knowledge in special education, but in my view, we need to now ensure, and this is why the building out the transformation is so key. How many teachers do we need to ensure that we have the full complement of special needs teachers across the system? But we have to then step back and ask ourselves, is there an increase in the population of children with special needs? And what is that chart looking like? So that we can, as planners, look ahead in the next year or two. So for example, going from birth, and that's why the mapping so early of that development app that I spoke about is key. Because if we, for example, realize this year at birth, we had X amount of children, or within the first year, who have special needs based on the assessments. And within 2 or 3 years, they're going into the education system. Do we have the full complement of teachers around the system that can match what we're seeing in that graph? So it requires a holistic review as to where we are. And the third and important point I want to make is that special education isn't just a qualification, it is a calling. It is a calling. And why do I say that? Outside of the qualification, because you can go, you can study, you can get the certification in special education, you can learn it on the job, like many teachers are already doing, being thrusted into that area. But the patience that you require, the love that you require, is of course majorly important, because of course you have to then go above and beyond the quote-unquote normal circumstance. So the teacher of the future requires, in my view, that level of training. If you're in the system, the CPD, and the Erdiston, the curriculum transformation is going to be key. Because those who are now coming into the system, of course, that curriculum must now, going back to what I said, marketed in 1997 and marketed in today is different. The curriculum at Erdiston also has to incorporate that as we go forward. And of course, the ministry is working assiduously to make sure that that's happening.
Thank you very much, Minister. I think I saw 1 or 2 more questions.
I think Saul here.
I just want to encourage everyone to just, if you are looking to ask a question, I think I saw what? Can I see your hands? 3 persons? 4 persons? Well, we're now getting persons. What we'd like to do, we know that we've kept you long, and we really want to thank you for staying. Certainly, it must be an interesting conversation that we are having. So we have, so if you can just, those would be the last questions that we will take. Yes, sir, come to the mic.
Hi, good night. My name is Dwight. I'm a teacher at New Horizons Academy. So my question is kind of based towards there. Dr. Gibbs would have spoken in terms of that we had about 23%, I think was the number, of those who would have been under the criteria for the social and the emotional behavior issues. And like at New Horizons, we have those who have been expelled, and sometimes they have been expelled and they have been out for like 4 months, 6 months, 8 months, and then they're brought into the school, and then they're like 14 or 15. And then sometimes so we have those who are now in class 4, who then are also brought to New Horizons as well. So then you have those who are 11 who are now mixing with those who have been on the block, who are already in crime and stuff like that. But collectively, we are really supposed to be helping all of them in the same way. So and my question really is I know that it is a draft, but has there been any thought in terms of how we are going to handle those who have these behavioral issues, especially now in a society now where there are so many young persons who are showing elements of delinquency. So even though, yes, I know that we can talk about the exceptions and different stuff, but for me, my question just in terms of that level of behavior and that level of deviance, is there anything that there is in the draft that targets that specifically, if it be New Horizons or something else, to help those children before they then now become a statistic that goes to dogs or worse yet, who are killed? Yeah, that's my question.
Dr. Gibbs, I think that one is yours. Interventions for persons who have shown deviancy and so on. Does the policy speak specifically or in general to this particular occurrence?
Yes, the policy does speak to those students with behavioral challenges. The early intervention of those challenges is also noted, but specific to what you are asking, Mr. Saul, with regards to a school that is set up specifically for students with behavioral challenges, the policy is making a recommendation that there be a residential facility for students who need to be away from the areas that have created the issues that the child is presenting. In other words, a time away from the people who made the child to be what you are seeing in front of you, because the child did not just born and become what is being presented as a student at risk. There had to be some factors in the child's environment that caused the child at 11, at 13, at 15 to be presenting this behavior. And it is, I would believe, it would be frustrating for a teacher to be working with a child, counseling a child, and giving the child more positive choices that he or she can make. And that child going back to an environment in which those choices are nullified and voidified because of the environment that the child is in. So the recommendation, and it's only a recommendation because it's only a policy, the recommendation is that there be a residential facility for our students who are showing the greatest risk so that they can be away from their what we will call their familiar surroundings for a period of time, and we can show them an alternative to their behaviors. We can assist them in making better choices. We can assist with anger management. We can assist them to show them that there's a better path than the one that they may have been accustomed to all the years. That's the recommendation of the policy.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Dr. Gibbs. Yeah.
Before you come...
Just a moment, yes. Just a moment. The residential facility is an excellent suggestion for the policy, and the Ministry of Educational Transformation is already trying to wrap our heads around how we can make this material. But even before we get to that tier, we have to think about the students who are engaging in deviant behaviors. And research shows that when students are actively engaged in the teaching learning process, they're less likely to engage in deviant behaviors. So we have to ask ourselves whether what they're learning is relevant to them, whether it's meaningful, whether it's practical. That's the first part. But then even, there are teachers who do their best. They try everything with these children and they still give trouble or some kind of trouble. We're looking at something like in-house suspension, right? But some wraparound, when I say in-house suspension, with the social workers and the counselors still working with the student to find out what is happening. And then even sometimes with in-house suspension, they are recidivists. So they come again and they do something, a little worse. So we're looking at possible out-of-school suspension, but not out of school, go on the block and hang with Billy, but out of school at Edna Nichols or a facility like Edna Nichols where they can get the kind of help that they need. But sometimes you have students even who, with that help, will still want to go and do something deviant again. And that's where we now have the day school. So we realize that the normal school system isn't working for them. So we have the day school, which is the New Horizons. But as you said, Raphael, there are students who, even in the day school, they go through all of your sessions and they have the engaging activities and they go home and they're on the block. They don't have the parental support. They don't have the guidance. So what do you do with them? And that is where the residential facility now will be more suitable for them. But we don't expect them to be in the residential facility forever. We have to think about working with agencies, having the wraparound services, like the Ministry of People Empowerment, going and helping the families out of the situation that they're in. They may be in that situation because of economic circumstances. They're trying to make $1. So they're hustling and doing all kinds of things, and that's the environment, that's all they know. So I think we have to look at this thing very holistically, and we have been looking at it very holistically to see what kinds of measures we can put in place at each stage, but more importantly, what kind of support we can put in place at each stage.
Thank you, Chief. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, good night. My name is Gabriella. I am a student care coordinator. To that point, one of my recommendations would be also having parental support groups in place. That can be done on a consistent basis, starting with maybe twice a week. That can include the parent and the child, or having the parent separately once the child is in the residential program. So that's my recommendation. The other recommendation is for the residential program, there should be an extended time period. With that happening, there needs to be conversations had with the school, with the parent as well, with all persons involved with that child, within, let's say, every 6 weeks to monitor the progress of that child. Based on that, you can then determine whether or not the child is able to go back home with the parent or within the school setting once that behavior has been adjusted to suit. Yeah. So, my question now. I'm happy to hear that we are mentioning IEPs and GEPs. I'm very happy to hear it. I know that that is a legally binding document, and there's a process for IEPs. When the process states that there has to be a particular criteria. Now, when we have this criteria, not every child with a disability or with a diagnosis needs an IEP. That's the reality of it, because not every child is the same, and we all know this. My recommendation to that comment, I'm asking as well, I should also ask, what are your other alternatives than an IEP or a GEP for those students who do not require an IEP? Whether it is an accommodation plan, an in-house academic plan, or an in-house behavioral plan. So what are the alternatives from an IEP that can be used?
Okay, if I'm understanding your question then, and you can correct me there, you're asking the question, what other alternatives exist that are outside of the IEP and the GEP that may be suitable for children who may possess different abilities or different needs within the school system? Because
not every child is going to require an IEP.
Correct.
So what are the other alternatives that can be put in place for those other children?
Okay, so what I'm hearing, Dr. Gibbs and Chief, is that the question is about what other learning interventions
Plans.
and plans would be suitable for children other than the IEP or GEP based on circumstances.
Thank you for your question. The set of facilitatory measures that are outlined under the, what is it called, a QR code, you will notice when you access those, the 16 areas that are being facilitated, you will notice that there's scope for a behavioral plan. There's scope for a reading rehabilitation plan. There are very many different types of plans that have been outlined in that section under the QR code, whereby if the child needs that specific plan, that can be accessed for that particular child. The child that you say may not need an IEP. My thing about it is that if the child does not need an IEP, the child may be a candidate who can function without that, but within the group context with the GEP, and have the behavioral plan in place for him or her. That way, the child is still being facilitated and the child is still getting the quality education that he or she needs. But there are several plans and intervention strategies there in the policy, specific to varying areas and varying approaches and varying behaviors that may be being presented in the child. So the facilitator simply needs to look there and pull one of those plans.
Okay. I wasn't able to go through it fully, but my next question is, how often will those plans be assessed or reviewed?
And you're talking specifically about the IEP and the GEP?
Well, not the IEP, but the other plans, the other plans. How often will they be reviewed?
Termly.
And
our term is a 12-week term, and the first term is a 14-week term. So termly.
That seems, in my opinion, from my experience, that seems to be a bit too long. And I say that because you have 12 weeks, based on how many goals you may have for that child, or how many objectives, the child may be able to get certain things done within a 6-week time span. So when that child is able to accomplish those goals or those objectives, what then? 12 weeks is too long.
But you do know that the review is not just the teacher doing that review.
I'm aware.
That there are other professionals who have to be available to assist with that review.
Yes,
so
I am
that's
aware.
why we said termly.
Please, we're getting some crosstalk in the audience. If you could, just one person at a time, please. Thank you.
I'm aware.
Based on the availability of the other professionals and those on the team.
Understood.
Okay.
But my suggestion
But I take your point.
Is to not
in
have
a
it too
perfect
drawn
world,
out.
It will be every 3 weeks.
Well, for me, I have mine for me at least, I have mine every 6 to 8 weeks. That's a standard setting. So how I do it is my current school, we have care team meetings every month with our care team, which is our psychologist, our social worker, our behavior therapist, and the teachers. That's every month. That's a standard meeting. And then for those who are on plans, every 6 weeks, we then have those conversations with the parents involved for that particular child. It is a standard set meeting. So before even the school term starts, we have those set schedules already in place to avoid any confusion in between. So I said I recommend every 6 to 8 weeks, and that can be decided at the beginning of the school year before things start to get a bit hectic, because we know how it goes. But that's my point.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Chi?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. A very good question and good points being made. But what I want to clarify is that if our philosophy is indeed that we are catering to the needs of every student, it means, in fact, that some students' performance will have to be reviewed every 6 weeks, others every 3 weeks, others every 2 weeks, others every 1 week, others every term. What I'm saying is, you asked firstly about IEPs. It is not likely that every child will need an IEP. Some students will need that individual education plan. Others can function very well with the group educational plan. Others might just need a personalized learning plan, depending on what their strengths and their weaknesses are. If we change our philosophy relative to how students learn and how we teach our students and how we're approaching our students, it means that the kind of rigidity to which we have subjected ourselves for several years will have to change. I think more and more what we need to do is to allow the data, whatever data is being presented, the child's behaviors, the child's cognitive ability, drive how we cater to that child. Because every child matters. And I can't treat John the same way that I will treat Jamie, because Jamie might have different needs, whether it is in terms of time, in terms of physical resources, or in terms of human resources. And that is why the educational transformation agenda speaks to flexibility in the learning in the whole system of learning. We're looking at things like pull-out programs where needed, right? So a child might be excellent in English, but it doesn't mean that you have to stop down the child because he's not good in math. If he's not so good in math and he needs some help, pull out program and give him the kind of work, give him the kind of attention that he needs. You see? So I think the focus should be on, not I think, I know, that the focus should be on the child and intervening so that we can give the child the best support to reach his or her full potential.
Before you come, sir, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very aware that we have gone past our scheduled time. Okay. I know that we have 3 other persons who presently want to make a contribution, so I would want to ask that you are very crisp in your question or your comment or your query. Thank you, sir. Come through.
You're blessed. Good night. Name is Rodney. My daughter is a pupil at this school. It's an honor to address you, Minister, and the Chief Education Officer. I would just going to keep it as short as possible. To me, this was one of the best presentations from the ministry I see so far, because you're coming all the time to make changes, you're making changes, you're trying for it. This is a very good one. For these things to work, you need parents involved. A lot of the things there, people beating the teachers, they licks on the teachers all the time. The parents got to come and look to get involved and understand that at the end of the day, yes, the teachers be there to teach my child, but me as a parent got to be there to help to mold this being in order for me to get my children to go forward. Too much emphasis game left, what you should say, at the ministry, be blaming people, be pointing fingers. This initiative is a good one, but the only thing lacking here, and I can make just my proposals, is discipline. Discipline. We need to really, before going forward, we here teaching it, trying to get the right proposal to get it before Parliament, but in the meantime, let me start to hit the aspects of discipline. Too much children reach the stage where they tell themselves at 13 or 14 years old, well, nobody can tell me nothing, they could do as they like, they could disrespect teachers, even attack them. This is wrong. The ministry got to take a stance that firm and even involve the parents too, because if my daughter could come at this school and injure a teacher, I should be held accountable. I should be held responsible for that. And these are things that should be written in law. Let people understand that the ministry taking a change, yes. To your point, sir, you said we're doing a surgery, but there's a cancer attacking the body. They got drugs, mollies, and children at school vaping and smoking. We got some older fellas that gonna come and try to draft in with youngsters and trying to get with there. Let me get hitting for the drug programs. Let me get in, ringing the children ears, the GEP, which is the group projects. Wonderful idea. This is the hall room for the St. Michael's School. I would like to thank the head teacher and all the staff here for doing a wonderful job with my daughter. But look at it in here. In here could do some work. And for me, right, the problem gonna be is that everybody wants gonna say, Minister, look at how in here look and this and that. No. We should be able to get students to come in here. I know you got some really wonderful children with their hands gifted. Paint a hibiscus on the wall. Paint a thing and make the environment more thing and try to let me do it. These Bajans, let me come together and push this thing. Want Bajans come together, good heads come together, production that's happened, and we can't stray from that. Like I just keep reiterating, we forget where we come from, but pride and industries will build this island, and this is what we're going to carry forward. We ain't got gold, we ain't got bauxite, we ain't got nothing, but like I said, the minds of holy leaders we have here running each individual sector is what we're going to take for the nation and make us great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Let me thank you very much for not just coming and speaking, but speaking from the heart and speaking the truth as to where all of this needs to go. Let me jump in, first of all, about the infrastructure. You and I have the same mindset. I want to tell you what I told the chief just now when I came out here and I looked around. But you're right. And two, that is part of, as I said, the building out of the infrastructure of our school plants are key. And that's why the government is spending the resources to make sure that it is fit for purpose for our children, our teachers, etc. You touch on a key aspect, my brother, parents. The government can set policies. The teachers can be the best trained. We can have all the best modalities, the most exciting education that our children can have. And I'm happy to see our brothers from the union here right at the back. All right. If our parents, as you rightly said, don't also own or co-own the process, this is all for naught. Because you're going to have these spaces being improved in infrastructure, excellent teaching, good curriculum. But then if you go home to an environment where it's not just going home to a block, you could go home to an environment where the parent is not interested. They may have challenges also. They may have financial issues. And their focus is providing you with a meal. But they're not giving you that emotional support that you need to overcome sometimes the things that you may have as a challenge at school, or to reinforce what you're learning at school. So one of the conversations I'll be having with the country over the next few months is the importance of the role of parents in this entire process. And it goes back to what I said about that developmental app, as it were. Once you can present parents, this is where your child can go on this current trajectory of health and education based on the assessments on that side. And you get them to own the process. You also have to inspire the parents, because sometimes parents need a little inspiration. Parents are humans. They have their different challenges.
Sir, I'm going to add to you saying, and for me, right, once again, we strain from we Bajan roots. Bajans has helped one another. You got parents at some schools, you may got a parent that know another parent struggling, help them. They ain't time to tear down the body, they ain't time to fight down the body, help them. Sometimes that little help that you may be in a better position to assist. That little help you may give them, you ain't got to come in the form of money. School time around here, you know, well, the mommy working and thing, the child may be a learner. Help them, let me help each other. And as long as we stick to these fundamentals that the day before we were born, we can get forward with this. This will be a success.
But before, don't go too far, because I want to throw a challenge to you here, and obviously to all parents who are interested. As I have those conversations going forward, I would like you to also join with helping to frame some of what you're talking about. Would you accept that?
Right, sir. When you leave, I have something for you,
God
sir.
bless you. No problem. Cool.
Thank you so much, sir. And our second to last presenter. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, good night. Bernella Keynes Hall of Elite Academic Support Services. I think I have a few things. Somebody spoke earlier in terms of parent support groups. And the thing about special ed, I love it, but when you think about it, you get a headache because there are so many moving parts, there are so many things to consider. Because for me, when my daughter was diagnosed about 11 years ago, I couldn't find a support group for a child with a challenge who is almost a genius, who is average intelligence. I couldn't find a support group for me. And what I've realized in my work for the past 11 years, you have a lot of parents out there like that. So I'm looking at working with children now. They may have ADHD, they may be on the spectrum, and they have an IQ of 115, 120. And a lot of time when we talk about special needs, these are not children that we talk about. Generally, the public would look at children where you can see some physical manifestation of a special need. So a lot of time, children with hidden challenges are being ignored. For example, in terms of, I think what Chantal spoke earlier in terms of accommodation, how does the policy speaks to, and I know I'm putting you on the spot because, like I said, it's so much moving parts and everybody's almost unique. So when you have a child with average intelligence, who is reading 3 years below their grade, their class level. But if you read for them, you can give them work 2 to 3 years above. How do you accommodate that child in mainstream? What is there for them when they need a reader for every single test? And this is something I'm asking for you to consider because that is what my daughter went through. Because what I was told by the school, and I knew it, and every year I would go and I would speak with the school, and I would get, but you know, if she needs that extra 15 minutes, that extra half an hour, this is the timetable. If we give her half the test and she have to come back for half during break or lunch, you know, the integrity of the test is compromised. So these are some of the things that she went through as a neurodiverse child with average intelligence. So that is something that I am saying for you guys to look at, because if you have a deaf student, sometimes it's easy to give them an interpreter. But what happened to these children with dyslexia or other language-based challenges? Are they going to get someone to sit in the class with them and read for them on a daily basis? Can they get the extra time every single time they get a test? In the current structure of the school system, it's really difficult. Another thing I wanted to ask.
You want to let us just tackle that one first, ma'am?
Want to tackle that?
Yeah, I think we want to be able to ensure that we can be able to answer correctly. Chief, I think this one is to do with person may be average, if I'm hearing you correctly, average intelligence, but may have some difficulties in terms of remedial work that needs to be done. What is the ministry's vision as to how this can be accommodated? As the our participant is saying, she had a problem with her daughter at that one.
Yeah. Our ideal situation is to have a reader for the student coming through school. In fact, we had a staff meeting quite recently. This is within the Ministry of Educational Transformation, and we were talking about the fact that coming on to exam time, some parents ask for readers for their children. But then the question was asked, what was happening all before? Yes, the child deserves a reader, but what happened all before in infants A, infants B, class 1, class 2, class 3, and class 4? So we spoke about the ideal that we would wish to see, and that would be that we have readers throughout school to cater to the students who need readers. Now that will be an expensive venture, but we can plan for it. I have a minister who always says that nothing is impossible. All right? So we have to just dream it, and we will work towards that.
I think I wanted to ask, in terms of, I haven't heard much of this coming out, but in terms of the transformation, how much emphasis is being placed on social and emotional learning and in terms of executive function skills? Because in dealing with children with challenges, what I've realized is that when you explicitly teach the executive function skills, these are all the soft skills they need to survive in life, they actually do a lot better. Because they would understand how to plan, how to organize, how to manage the time, how to initiate a task, how to ask for help. How much emphasis is being placed on this? Because it's not, like you say, it's not just the here and now.
That's right.
It's lifelong.
It's lifelong.
Yeah, let me jump right in there, and you hit on a key thing. Remember, I spoke about the importance of early childhood education and exposing our children to that level of development at that early age, because as I said, that is the stage where they grasp most of the concepts that they will later go on in life, and it remains with them. Exposing our children to that emotional intelligence and social skills at an early age, similar to what our counterparts do in Asia and in the Arab states at that age, is going to be key. So it's not just left at the primary level and secondary level, but the early childhood education is going to be key in that delivery. And why am I focusing on the early childhood education? And of course, different from just nursery, because nursery, daycare. But early childhood education means even at that stage, you're ensuring that those children have the full understanding and exposure to learning. This is a completely different exercise to babysitting children. So there is significant premium that we're placing to ensure that that is now embedded in the system. And in particular, for children who, of course, you spot based on the assessments that may have challenges or that may be so gifted, you have that special carve-out. Because as the chief said, the pulling out is not only if there's a challenge, but if there's a gift, you should also be able to accelerate within those confines as well, should that be present. So you've hit on a key point that is part of what we're actually looking to do.
Understands how he or she learned, they will be successful.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Thank you. We're at our last. The minister has given you some absolution, sir. So you may ask your question. Yes, but yes, ma'am. Your question, please.
Good night, everybody. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good night, everybody. My name is Nadia Simmons. I am firstly proudly a mother of an autistic son. I'm also the public relations officer for the Autism Association. And I am going to be vulnerable and say that I'm terrified from the policy. I've been at both town hall meetings and I'm honestly terrified. I had some hope. The first person that came and asked a question, she said her loved one, who's 31 now, when he was 11 plus, there was talks about stopping it then. This is now 20 years later and we're still here. And you all would know firsthand, the cases of autism is rising. And teachers are struggling, parents are struggling, and we need intervention now. And I know you all say you can't give a date, but a date is needed. You're losing kids. You're failing kids. You're failing families with the current system. I know you said you all did programs with workshops about potty training and the speech therapy. 8 sessions of speech therapy is nothing. It's nothing. My son is 8 years old, from 2.5 to now. He's going to speech therapy every week. And if somebody canceled, I beg to take that spot. He's now beginning to say hello and bye-bye. I will do the best for my child, but there are parents who cannot afford speech therapy, or occupational therapy, or behavioral therapy. Education is not free for us. Healthcare is not free for us. our families are being failed. And I'm begging for immediate help.
Ma'am, I'm hearing you loud and clear. I'm hearing the emotion in your voice. I understand what you're saying. Could you identify what that help looks like?
How long do we have?
No, I understand the point you're making, but...
speech therapy. My son has been in speech therapy every day for every week since he's been 2.5, and he's now beginning to talk. Not that by any standard America is something that we should follow, but in America, when a kid is diagnosed with autism, in most cases they have access to speech therapy all day, every day. That's their school is speech therapy or behavioral therapy or occupational therapy. That is how their school is therapy.
So you're saying continuous speech therapy provision,
access to speech therapy.
Right.
And I know you don't have the therapists. I know you don't have them. Let's be creative. We during COVID, we came up with a way to bring tourists here. We had a welcome stamp. Welcome therapists for 6 months.
Okay.
They want to come here to have a vacation for 6 months. Let's facilitate that. Let's create housing, create a space, and let kids that are on the wait list for a year or 2 years get access. And maybe a training plan that the parents can go home and work with the kids on. Schools. I admittedly was a pain to the Ministry of Education the last 1.5 years, begging for bursary for my son. Because education is free, but not for our children. If I tell you what I pay every month, you would be shocked. Because my son is not fully potty trained. But I have to find that money every month. And I annoyed everyone in the ministry. I'm sorry, but I did. Because me and my families like mine are struggling. My son needs almost one-on-one care, and he can't get that in a public setting. What am I to do? I have to find the money to put him in school. From where?
Chief?
I have just...
Oh, sorry. I thought you were... Okay, go ahead. Finish.
From the last meeting, parents in the Autism Association had a question about how would you all accommodate kids that elope, kids that, when you let go of their hand, they're off. How can parents feel safe in your inclusive environment with runners that can climb over fences and open doors and pick locks? And if there's not one-on-one attention, somebody holding his hand all day, how is that parent at work being able to focus, earn a living for their family when they have to worry about, did my child get out today?
Thank you. Chief?
Before the Chief jumps in, let me first thank you wholeheartedly for your candid expression as to the reality. Not just for you, as you said, for many who are in a similar position. And I want to, of course I'm new in this ministry, okay? But I made the point earlier that as part of the protocol, there was a previous question, we have to work with the experts in the area and also the stakeholders who are day-to-day exposed to the different realities. And I see an opportunity, speaking out to not just you as a mother, but also part of the association focus on autism, that we have to constantly engage with those stakeholders who are on the front line day-to-day dealing with these issues, so as to help inform, not just in this public open space, but in a very tailored, granular way, and saying to the ministry, this is the reality of these children, this is the reality of the parents, these are the challenges, the financial costs, so that as we formulate the policy of government, we also speak to the other ministries in government so that there's a holistic strategy that treats to the deficits and challenges that you are facing, so that it's not just business as usual. The transformation means that we, as the Prime Minister always says, we're deconstructing the system as it is to make it inclusive and better. So I'm happy to hear this, not happy of the issue, but happy that it has come forward to the fore, certainly for me now. So as Minister to be able to go back internally and say, look, these are the gaps that need to be closed. Because if we're going to have an education policy that's inclusive, it cannot be that parents are not giving the tools to be able to treat these things. So I completely agree with you, and it's something, therefore, that I want to commit publicly, that we have to now work assiduously to make sure that we close that gap.
I also wanted to respond, and you can come in afterwards. I support what the minister said wholeheartedly. But there's one thing. I don't want you to feel terrified. I understand that you are, but I don't want you to feel terrified. What I want you to do is to help us to find solutions for children like yours. Every day, we go to work and we try. We have Michelle got in there, and the senior education officer, K. Sargent, who are always talking about children with special needs. The other day, we expanded the budget, just under $4 million spent on ensuring that children with special education needs receive education in private facilities because we don't have enough spaces. That was an expansion given, that was an increase given to us by the government of Barbados, and we utilize that. In terms of speech therapists, we know we don't have enough speech therapists on island. A lady reached out to us sometime last year, Michelle. She said she wants to come. We told her, come. We did a background check. And we told her, come and help us. And she was going from school to school for an entire week. Michelle facilitated that, right? In terms of the National Development Scholarship, we said, well, speech therapy is an area where we're having issues. So, we got that put on the list. So every day we are trying, but we can't think of everything. You are living it every day. So we're extending a hand to you. We're saying, okay, come on, help us. How do we deal with runners? How do we deal with runners? Well, I know there are schools with runners. Michelle tells me about them. Kay tells me about them. Janice used to tell me about them. And how did we deal with them? Well, I know for sure there are certain precautions you had to take in terms of locking the big gate on the outside. And if they breach this part, at least they can't run out into the road. You have the teaching assistants and those persons who are always watching. But you may still be terrified even with those measures. So what more can we do? You live it, right? So reach out to us. We have Education Officer Gooding right there. Let me tell you, she's going to listen, right?
She hears me.
Right, good. She hears
knows
you.
me well.
Good. She's going to listen, and we're going to think about ways that we can cater to children like your children. So work with us, so you wouldn't be terrified.
And one thing I want to encourage you, Nadia, to remember, it will get better. It got better for me. It will get better for you.
And I think we had one last person. This is our last person there? Our last person for the night then.
Hi, good night. My name is Juliet Wendt. I have a bit of, my earlier years I was practicing as an occupational therapist. So this is, something that's close to my heart. I'm going to talk really quickly, just a suggestion on with regards to helping children with special needs in the classroom. It's maybe a simple start, a simple step to take, which would be the Urdeston College, I think, if you implement perhaps something like an assistant, so teacher's assistant, because what's happening in the classroom is that teachers have a fair amount of children, they're very busy, a lot of responsibilities, but if you have a teacher's assistant who knows how to work specifically with a child with special needs, then they would get that added support. I think you had mentioned that you have a range up to maybe 12 children in a class, perhaps more. So at 12 children, 23% of the kids have special needs, I think he was saying, which would put you at 2 to 3, maybe 3 kids per class, if you have a 12 to 13 people in a class. That's 3 kids, you have maybe 1 teacher's assistant, or I have a classroom that brings in, it's just a step to go forward, where you have your special needs children, incorporated in the class until you get more people who are trained for more classrooms, so that they can be all across the island. With respect to the mom who's petrified, I would say if you can talk to a therapist perhaps and ask for a home exercise program, so you can get specific home exercise programs for children with special needs according to their particular level of function. Because the problem is with special needs children, they have so many different diagnoses, and they function at so many different levels. So it's very hard to plug a special needs child into a level, so to speak. So the IEPs would address perhaps that as a home exercise program. And also she can ask for some tips from the speech therapist and from the therapist, just some things that they can, it's very simple, doesn't require, 5 years of training, but very simple exercises that they can do with their kids, because the parents care, but they're very overwhelmed. So just some things that they can see, and also, I like the idea with the environment and getting the kids to actually do it. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Self-esteem and sense of accomplishment and things like that. Okay.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for those suggestions.
We talked about the groups and the IEP and the groups and the interaction and the constructivist. But our assessment, we do all of that in the classroom. But at the end of the day, how is the child assessed, written? You understand? So we do all of the group work and stuff. But at the end of the day, the common entrance, you go into the exam room for an hour and a half, you understand, and you do the assessment. So really and truly, you are squashing all that you have done. And that is why that 60% of students feel like failures. Because in the classroom, they were talking, you understand. I have a child whose verbal skill surpass his written skills. Surpass. The type of words that he used on me sometimes, I have to look wrong at him sometimes. But when you put him in that classroom to do that 11 plus, he will feel like a failure because he has the words up here, but then it takes him long to write it down, or then he can't articulate it in the way in which he is conceiving it. And we talk about the 11 plus, but there are simple tweaks that we can do to the 11 plus to make it more inclusive for students. And therefore we have to start with those tweaks, because sometimes we think we have to make these big changes, but we have to start small. We have to start small. The early detection, you understand? At 4, my child went to this Albert AC Graham, and you know when the person called me? In February, 6 years after. 6 years after. After speech therapy, every week, $120. Reading, $55. Occupational therapy, $120. But there are simple measures that we can make. 15 minutes and half an hour is not enough for students.
So our assessment must look like what we do in the classroom if we are to have really lasting impact on students that really need it.
Okay. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Andrew Skeet, Principal, Grand Islands Memorial School. I want to agree with you because some simple tweaks to examinations do help. At Grand Islands Memorial School, we provide readers, we provide scribes for exams at the end of every academic year. I think this year, we've done about 15 children. The thinking is try to move it into throughout the academic year, so we're practicing, students are practicing what they're going to be assessing at the end. And this is important anyway, because when we take them to CSEC, City and Guilds, or CCSLC, in order to have a read, you have to show that you have been trying. In fact, one of the schools that has really been trying to implement, and that's why I'm happy that we're trying to formulate the policy, because a lot of things that you're going to have to legislate, especially as it relates to training. I'm sorry that Dr. Lynch has left. I went into a school and I saw a few things that I just couldn't understand. So I subjected myself for 1 year of training in special ed. And in fact, before the first term was finished, I think the goodly chief was, the principal at the time was asking her to try to see how we can integrate some of what I had already learned into the wider training and development, professional development for the school. In fact, I believe that the current diploma education should be expanded really to include all elements of the special ed program, because the thinking changes. In fact, our school promotes it, the board is supporting it, and I think we have the most special ed trained teachers in Barbados. So if you want a school to go to, you can tell anyone, we're going to look after your children, we're as inclusive as possible. Grand Isles Memorial School is the school to go to. Maybe they tell me to try to promote it, but
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, on that positive note, we would want to bring this Inclusive Education Town Hall meeting to a close. But before we do that, I'd like to just ask each of the panelists to just give 30 seconds of a summation, starting with yourself, Dr. Gibbs, and Chief, and then the Minister will wind up for tonight. Dr. Gibbs?
I wish to thank all of you for coming. I thank all of you for your contributions, very valuable contributions. Wish to publicly thank the team, the Skills for the Future team, headed by Mr. Savory, for their help and support. Wish to thank the Student Support Services Unit team also for their help and support in helping to formulate the policy. God bless you.
Ditto. It went just as I expected. Excellent questions, excellent suggestions. It is always good, as I started by saying, when you can come and hear your feedback and then go back to the drawing board in some cases, or just go back and just make a few tweaks. But this is always valuable for us. Let's continue to work together to create a bright future for every child.
Yeah, simply put, this evening provided, certainly for me, yes, as a policymaker, you have a vision as to where you want the system to go, what are the opportunities, what are the threats. But it's very clear, Barbadians want our education system to work for all of us. That's one. Two, it requires not just the ministry, yes, driving the transformation, driving the agenda. Can we have one meeting? We soon finish, don't worry. Mr. Principal, sir? Mr. Principal, sir? I am sure if this was your students at Bradley Adams, you would tell them you can't have the principal talking and the students talking. All right, God bless you. But simply put, this requires, yes, the ministry driving the transformation, but it's clear coming from this evening that all of the stakeholders, parents, the associations, the schools, the students themselves, and I want to include this as well as I close. We constantly meet with the student councils on a regular basis. Why is that important? The future of this country's education system also has to ensure that we place significant premium on ensuring that our students, whilst they're at school, have the exposure to understanding all of this, and how can they build the capacity for not just themselves now, but who are going on to do different things. So it's really a whole of society approach, and I know that that term is bandied about quite often, but this evening reinforced, certainly in my mind, that the expertise is not only in the ministry, but the expertise and ideas is also within the public and the educators and the parents who are living it on a day-to-day basis. So the mechanism, and I want to commit to the public, that the consultation will not only take this format, it will also take the format of sending in your ideas and everything, portals where you can make your suggestions, sending in videos, but equally, we have to let the public help us craft the message. This is our country, this is our education system, anchored, of course, by the ministry. So I want to commend all of the team who've put this together. For those of you who physically come, who've left as well, thank you for coming. Those of you who are online watching and also sending in your questions, it has really been, in my view, an evening that allows for us to further tweak and realign the policy as we go forward to ensure that the system is not just inclusive, but it's fit for purpose in the 21st century Barbados as we go forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister, and thank you very much to the panel. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. The mere fact that you're still with us means that you found it an engaging session, and for that we thank you. And we trust that you will get home safe. And as we go forward, feel free to engage the ministry on this and other matters of national interest that we can be able to improve our education system. So good night, get home safe, God bless.